So welcome to NPO or Business. The debate continues. So I will be representing the business side today, and Michelle will be representing the NPO side today. And we will then use it almost like a tag team to look at the differences and the similarities between the two and find out why NPOs are different or don't want to become like a business, and what is possible, what is feasible, and what is plausible for the future. So it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but with great information on this. So my name's Bruce Wade, and I am the innovation coach at EM Solutions. And so I play around in the entrepreneur space and come up with modeling and marketing stuff for people who want to make a profit and are all about products. And we are joined today with Michelle. Michelle, you want to give us an introduction?
Sure. I am on our email signatures, Bruce is the Chief Entrepreneur Officer, and I'm the Chief Enterprise Officer. So you can see we have two sides of the same coin. My experience is nearly 20 years in the nonprofit sector, primarily looking at financial management and strategic consulting, looking at structures and the operating model of the organization to see what is the best fit for what it is that you do and who you are. We've been working together for a couple of years now, and so what we do as a company is we merge the two sides, and this is why we decided we would play opposite sides of this argument, because typically our business model is actually where we look strategically at a nonprofit organization and see or help the organization to build a business arm or a business income generating aspect to the nonprofit. That's our specialization, where we bring my nonprofit history and Bruce's entrepreneurial expertise, and we help organizations to build some sustainability through income generation. So for us, we're quite excited to see how today will work, because this is who we are. We are both sides of this coin, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't.
So Michelle, you've got a question for us just to start off with. You want to put that out and people can answer in the chat box?
Yes, okay, let's do that. It was just to kind of get you thinking. So we started off by looking at what are the things that businesses do, what are the things that nonprofits do, what are the terminology that we use? And we thought, well, actually, let's get you guys to give us some input. So the first thing I want to ask you, if I say the business word products, what would you consider the equivalent to be in a nonprofit? What is a nonprofit word for products? What do you think the products are?
Okay, so you can just shout it out or type it in. Let's get some
in the chat.
Got your
services.
Yeah, product would be the services that you offer.
Okay. Yep. There's one. There we go. Projects. Yeah. There we go. Good stuff. All right.
Yeah, we like alliteration. So, we go with projects because it goes with products. Mm-hmm. Projects, programs, there we go. Anthony's on a roll. So what is another area that businesses engage in, particularly if it's manufacturing or some kind of production, is quality control. Is there a comparative in a nonprofit setting?
Yes, that would be your M&E, your monitoring.
There we go. Well done. All right. Yeah. The famous M&E. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the maybe slightly trickier one is, who are your customers?
Probably your beneficiaries.
There we go.
I think it depends on the sort of organization that you are, but your stakeholders and beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm. Stakeholders, my favorite word. Yeah.
Because you like to, your knife to be holding your steak.
Yeah. I'm a stakeholder at the braai, otherwise I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. You talk about stakeholders because it's broader than just your beneficiaries. If you're looking at it in a business sense, your customer is the person who pays for the service, but we have this split transaction where the beneficiary is the one who receives the service, but the donor is the one who pays for it. A lot of the time. Obviously not if you have a shop or a business or something like that, but so there is actually multiple parties who could potentially be the customers.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that got you thinking, got you interacting.
Cool. So what we've done, we've just come up with a whole lot of terms, and we had quite a lot of fun doing that. So on the left-hand side is my side, and it's all about the customers and clients. And there's a big debate in the business sector, what's the difference between a client and a customer? But those relate to, Michelle?
Well, beneficiaries and donors.
Yeah.
I think it's slightly arbitrary the way that we split it there, because it just depends on how you understand your customers versus clients. But both of those are both of the business ones.
Yeah. So we have sales, which is fundraising, and we have products
and projects.
Okay, and marketing, that's a fun one.
Yeah, because for a non-profit, it's the relationship management. And part of that is marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing to the public, awareness raising, kind of promotion, that kind of thing. But it's also marketing to donors, where you're trying to build a relationship and trying to build some trust and some history there and all that kind of thing. So marketing is a different kettle of fish for an NPO.
Very much so, yeah. And I think the reporting structure is also just the mechanics of it, because a business will have what we call the C-suite, which is the CEO, the CIO, the COO, the CFO, and they keep adding to that. So we put all those together and we call them the C-suite, which is the executives, or the ExCo, which might be a term that's used, but it's normally the executives. We don't like to reduce names in the business world because it's very much ego-based. So very much lower. You wouldn't be called them ExCo members. They would be executives, and you would have to say it slowly with good pronunciation because it's very ego-based.
Yeah, I don't want to say that the NPO one is not ego-based, because in some cases it can be, but typically that would be the equivalent would be your board, whether it be a management committee, board of directors, board of trustees, whatever it is, that depending on how you are structured.
Yeah, and I think the big thing there is the C-suite are often paid to be there, and they are often shareholders and salary drawers at the same time, and that's not always the case for a board. Okay, and then we have profits. That stuff that you put in your bank account at the end of the month.
Yeah, Bruce put here passion, and I really like that, because for me it's I think the sentence that goes around this is, what are you driven by? And for a business, you're driven by the profit. For an NPO, that's not the case. You're driven by the passion. And in some cases, you do make a profit. And in some cases, you barely scrape by. But it's the driving force is the passion.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in the business, we find broken things and then we fix them for profit. which is what most companies do most of the time, hopefully.
And I'm sure you'll identify that NPOs provide solutions because we care.
Oh,
Yeah.
not that we don't, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And you care about your customers as long as they're paying you.
yeah,
Whereas because of you take the money element out, and the people who are receiving the services are not always the people who are paying for them.
yeah,
The motivator has to be different.
yeah,
And
very different.
there is a big heart element to nonprofits that I think is really evident at the moment. You know, you see these people who have completely pivoted the tasks, their projects and what they do, their core business, offering food, doing food parcels out of nothing. You know, it's the NPOs, we just provide solutions. We make it work because we care.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
yeah. Okay, sorry,
That's
I went on a
interesting.
tangent.
That's all right. And yeah, we've spoken about quality control, which we break down to measure, manage, and improve. And that's related to that M&E stuff that nonprofits do. And then a little bit of financial stuff. We've got sales forecasts and ROI, which is return on investment, which is very different for an NPO.
Yeah. So, I mean, the sales forecast can be many things, but typically you're looking at some kind of fundraising pipeline, some kind of idea of where money's coming from going forward. Yeah, and the ROI being return on effort, what it is that you do, how you know, how do we quantify that? That's a big one. And I think, you know, people will say it'll be an impact report, and part of your evaluation is the effort actually worth it? Are you making a difference? Is the donor's money being utilized most effectively? Big questions.
Yeah. And running a business is very lonely because we don't talk to other people, which is, I find this is probably one of the biggest separations. So as an entrepreneur, you have to go build a strategic network, which means you've got to play golf, you've got to go sit at the yacht club on a Friday night or a Wednesday night. You've got to kind of network these people, and it's always, if I give you this, what can I get in return? And it's favor, and this hand washes that hand with strategic money making and deals and all that sort of stuff. That's the conversation that we're having around strategic networks, which is very different conversation, because you go into that partnership to say, how can we work together to rule the sector or to make more money or put other people out of their job so we can take over that market.
You're talking about the business, because that's not the mindset with the nonprofits.
No, that's yeah, strategic networks.
How do we partner with people
Yeah.
to make the biggest change? You know, and I think that the hardest thing for nonprofits is to focus and to say, I want to work in this community, but I'm only going to deal with this particular area because that's my expertise. But you see, the need is so great and the need is so broad, and it's so hard not to meet all the needs that you can see. And that's really why partnerships are so important, where you're able to partner with other organizations who are able to meet those other needs. So the heart is really, you know, what relationships do we need to build for the greatest benefit of the people that we work with. And in a lot of cases, in my experience, the partnerships have not been easy. You often partner with people who are difficult to work with or different from you, and it's challenging, but it's always ultimately for the best of the beneficiaries.
Yeah, and then when it comes to meetings, the business, we have directors meetings, and then we have shareholder meetings, where we have, director meetings is all about the internal mechanism and strategy, and then the shareholders meeting, reason people go to shareholders meeting is to find out what the dividend is. and if they can vote a new person in so they can make more dividend. And so it's very much a money strategic focus around those two meetings.
Yeah, and the board meetings are obviously it's governance requirements and things that you need to do. The interesting thing is that there is no such thing really as shareholders in a non-profit setting. The best you can get is maybe members if you're a membership organization. But often people feel beholden to their beneficiaries and to the public. So annual general meeting is an opportunity to engage with that wider stakeholders who might not have as much of a vested interest as a shareholder would in a business, but still want to connect with the organization and weigh in on the strategy. So the AGM is quite important. And I think just a little aside here, how often the AGM is underutilized. I know we have to, as organizations registered with the Directorate of Social Development, it's a requirement you have to have an AGM. And so we have these sort of 1 hour quick things with as many people, the staff and the core team as possible to get it over and done with, tick all the boxes, send off the report, and we're done. But it's actually
Okay. All right. We seem to have lost Michelle again. So let's continue. There's just the last two. There's the mission and the vision,
wonderful you are.
which is well defined within a business, and we then have a purpose, which is making wealth out of those two. Michelle, are you back with us? Okay, we'll wait for Michelle to reconnect. And obviously in the NPO stuff, you have the founding objective and a defined strategy. And that objective is often defined and limiting as well, but it also gives focus, which I think is great. We found some really good ones, and we've found some very open, poor ones that just said, we're here to help, or we're here to do this, or work in the community and things. Having a very clearly defined objective is great for an organization, but as you'll see is that if you want to do other things and branch out, then it can be limiting and restrictive in a little way. So what we've done, we've put together a model here for a business, just as a very high level flow chart, because we want to show you the similarities and the differences in the kind of mechanics of the two organizations. So it's all about creating cogs and wheels and make things work here. So I came up with this thing is that every business has cogs, but they're greased by cash flow and they're fueled by profit. And it's an interesting perspective there. So very high level is we start off with a product development. We have a business plan, and that comes in many different forms and shapes and sizes. And out of that, we then draw investors, using that to draw money from investors. And it could be the owners of the business, or angel investors, or venture capital. And you're raising money to give away shares. And all that then goes into manufacturing. We then create a product and we distribute that out to our clients, and we do that via sales and orders that we get there. And there's an element of marketing around the whole thing, where we got to go, and there's client relationships, and there's acquiring a clients and client retention strategies, and we play around with those things within the sales pipeline and your sales funnel. And in the blue box in the middle, we've got this infrastructure and finance, which is collecting all the data, making sure the regulations are done, and compliance, and keeping tabs on the labor and health and safety, and now COVID, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole bunch of cogs and mechanics that keep turning in the middle there. And then the green box at the bottom left-hand corner is obviously our customers, the people who are king in our businesses. And we do all the other blocks just so we keep them happy, because if we keep them happy, then they give us money and we make profit. And that's what it's all about in the business. So we're constantly looking at the needs of our customers and converting those needs back into the business plan and the manufacturing and R&D at the top left-hand corner where we play around. And R&D is research and development, and we like to play around with that, coming up with new products. And it's been interesting as an innovation coach. We've been working with a number of people over the last few months and helping them refocus their organizations and get to a point where they are able to utilize the existing skill sets and the existing assets and offer new products. We've done it ourselves, and it's been an interesting thing just to be able to refocus and reinvent. So we came up with those three things: is retribe, retool, and refocus. And we've been playing around with a number of those items. Michelle, you back with us? Okay, Michelle came and now she's gone again. Okay, she's coming back. There we go. Okay. Welcome back, Michelle.
Sorry, my internet keeps dropping, and
That's
then
all right.
So I was trying to join on my phone. If I lose you, I'm going to have to join on my phone again.
Okay.
And then
cool, no problem.
Be able to annotate. Okay.
So we've just got to your slide where we've spoken about the business mechanics, and now you can chat to us about the non-profit mechanics, and you'll see the diagram's very similar.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's very key to note how similar the process is. And I just want to highlight for everybody the significant differences. So we always typically start with some kind of project design or theory of change, where we understand what it is that we want to achieve and how we want to achieve that. And then the planning document goes into the strategic plan. I'm going to try and see if I can get this right, where I can draw an arrow. There we go. There we go. So the strategic plan is for board and the management. It's the information that tells them where we're going and what it is that we're going to do, and the board gives input onto that. And so that's the guiding document, where a business would have a business plan. But then we expand that to the funding proposal. I want to be on this circle. There we go. Where we take the strategy and we put it into some kind of document to apply for funding. And so we have this other relationship here. These are the people boxes, people circles over here. And so as a non-profit, you can immediately see that we have two audiences for the same sort of information. And that our number of people and relationships that we need to manage has doubled. And that's very significant as a non-profit organization. And I'm drawing on my face on the side here. So then once we get some money, we get going, we put together our materials, we plan what it is that we're going to do. We decide that this is the structure. And then we deliver the service. And this service delivery box is actually the biggest box that really should be in this diagram, because it really is the entirety of what the organization is focused around. How do we translate this theory of change through our materials into a service that we are delivering to our beneficiaries? So that's very key. And then we have the M&E that sits across these two. Yeah, can I type? I'm not going to try. So, you know, between what it is that you're doing, how you're doing it, your quality control in a business setting sits with your manufacturing, but with the M&E for a non-profit sits with your service delivery. Part of your process is tracking, is monitoring, is so forth. And then the sales button, the sales block, is a little bit of a strange one to convert to a non-profit, because you are selling yourselves to various audiences in a number of ways on a consistent basis, whether we call it that or not. There is definitely a sales element to what a nonprofit does. So, and we use different words. So in this case here, this one, sorry, I shouldn't be drawing. Let's do that. Is awareness raising. This is the public. So we're selling to the public. We're selling to our beneficiaries, potential beneficiaries, right? There is the service. Do you need it? What are the needs that you have? What is the explaining to the public? And I'm sure you guys as a disability network are, that's very much part of what you do, is communicating to the world out there the challenges of disability and the reality of what that means, and making people aware of the issues, of the needs, of the challenges that your organization meets. And so awareness raising around the problem or need is very strategic within an organization. And then following, linked to that, there is an element of marketing where you are promoting your organization itself, where you're putting, you've got a website and maybe a Facebook page, and, you're creating a brand and a reputation and a recognition so that donors and public individuals recognize who you are and what it is that you do, and then can contribute and join in you in achieving your objectives. So there is, to my mind, a difference between raising awareness of the need and the issue and marketing your organization as the solution to that need. In terms of the infrastructure, it's very similar to a business. You need an office, you need a telephone line, you need an accounting package, you need admin staff and finance people, and you have all of those things the same as you would for a business. But how you communicate out of that is then again multiple relationships. There's donor reporting that you do against the funding proposals. There is reporting to the board, so that you are communicating to all the stakeholders in different ways. And so the infrastructure needs to be set up in a way that accommodates that, to share the same information in different formats and to different people. And then the other one that sort of sits a little bit outside of here, and we bring this in as far as we are comfortable, is our partnerships. How close are your partners with you in this? How much do you share? In some cases, the partners are the more community-based organizations that you channel funding through as they meet the needs of the beneficiaries on the ground. In other cases, the partners are your peers in organizations that you're working with, and in others, it's where you collaborate to be able to access funding as a collective. And how much you communicate with your partners and how much you report to them on financial issues, on programmatic issues, on progress and so forth will depend on how close that relationship is and how intrinsic your partners are to your organization. And then yet again there is this beneficiary relationship as well. And in some cases there is a communication aspect out here, and I'm just going to try and write a GM, so that what we were speaking about before, there is always a communication with the beneficiaries, and there needs to then also be a circle that goes round all the way to the other side, where they give input as part of their M&E process to your service delivery, and to see that that is working and how that can be improved. So for me, the biggest differences here are really around the reporting, the relationships. We wrote a few things down and I want to just go through them, and it says the NPO mindset is relationship first. It's generous, it's self-sacrificing, it brings change and has impact, and that's really the mindset of the NPO. It's financed through funding and generosity. You identify the needs and problems and design the best process to meet the need and change the systemic problem. So you're not only about meeting the immediate need, but also about fixing the cause of the need where that's possible. We build relationships by meeting expectations of beneficiaries and donors. So identifying expectations and meeting those. We try to stay true to our calling while adjusting to the funding trends. That's a key one. You know, do we chase the money? People are giving money for certain things and not for other things, and there are certain, you know, trends within that. So it's very hard to try and find that tension between finding the money that you need, but also staying true to your strategic plan. And then finally, we review and evaluate the effectiveness of our activities to meet the needs. This idea of being a learning organization, they say this in corporate, and they have these huddles and, you know, bottom up, and they have lots of terminology and agile and all these things about ways of working. But it's really in the non-profits that you see the actual outworking of being a learning organization, where information is tracked, it's reviewed, it's engaged with, there's a regular review process. If you do a 3-year strategic plan, you're at least every 3 years looking at what you've learned and how you can adjust and how you can change. So it's intrinsic to how an NPO works that we're consistently learning. Otherwise, we lose our relevance, both to donors but also to our beneficiaries, and we find that the need for the organization wanes. So yeah, so that just gives you a little picture of the infrastructure of an NPO.
Cool, thank you. So what we want to do now is we just want to put these side by side here, because there's some similarities and differences which we can then highlight. So I'll just run through the similarities here. Is that we both do investigation. So this kind of area here and here is pretty much the same thing, where we're looking to develop new products. And what we do is just how we do it is probably slightly different, but that mechanics is there. There's also the sense of planning and writing up documents and strategies, which happen here. The format of the document, the business plan is probably a lot thinner than some of the NPO reports that I've seen. I think there's one thing that I've been amazed at. Boy, can NPO guys write reports. Goeie genade. And things. If you ever go out of business, you can just become novelists and just write stuff. So it's amazing. I'm amazed at the amount of reporting that happens within an NPO. Where a business plan is often just done on the back of a serviette in a bar somewhere, and then you've got the business plan, and you can play around with that. So we're also just looking at the resources, and that we're here, these are the resources. So we look for investors, we look for partners and people to come on board, and we have the 3F model, which is friends, fools, and families, and then we look at angel investors and venture capitalists and mom and credit card and housing bond and all those things that are used here. Where in the NPO world, it's a collection of multiple different people with different roles and different functions that we have there. But there is that sense of community that we do here. And it's interesting, both do marketing at the bottom here. So definitely marketing is a key thing. It's slightly different. One is called relationships, and there's a lot more social media. That's another thing that I've been amazed at, is that NPOs love Facebook, where business people are more found on LinkedIn. And it's slight sort of variation in that. There's a lot of people that still play around with that. I'm writing a marketing relationship theory, and it's entitled "If You Are an Impala, Stand at the Gate," and we'll be expanding more on that in the webinars that we do with the Cape Chamber as we go there. Tracking and reporting is definitely something that both people do, and that's kind of goes around kind of, well, almost all this and all this, where there's a sense of spreadsheets. That's Michelle's happy space. We like to track the effectiveness of production and sales and delivery and ROIs and cost saving and just-in-time deliveries and all that, where an NPO is very much looking at, are we meeting the theory of change criteria? Are we manufacturing the right stuff? Are we printing the right materials, sending that out? And then the effectiveness and the M&E of, how do you grade happiness and fulfillment and enjoyment related to how many food parcels are sent out? And it's a lot harder. I think reporting in the business is a lot simpler because you've got a triple bottom line. In a non-profit, you've got, I don't know, many different ways to look at it, and it depends on the donor. It depends on how you report. Depends on the, and playing around with that. But it's interesting that it also comes back to money, because both organizations are very much focused on money, and it comes back to return on investment with this, and it's returning back to the funders, and are you spending the right amount of money for the right amount of return? And I think those are the critical things. So what we want to just show you here is that it's not such a big leap to take an NPO and put the mindset slither. What do we want to do? We want to, like you would, insert a slice of cake into maybe an apple tart, and just fill that gap. So we want to put in that chocolate cake into the apple tart and say it's going to fit, because it's not like we're trying to put square things in round holes. And it's going to fit, and we are going to play around. But Michelle has a couple of things that won't fit, the differences.
Yeah, I think there are, as Bruce has said, there are a lot of similarities. And when we were putting this together, we thought, okay, we'll highlight all the differences. And, when we kind of drew out the diagrams, you're like, well, actually, they're just terminology. They're just words for different things. And they are very similar, and therefore shouldn't be so scary. But I think that there are two particular foci that, one for the nonprofit and one for the business, that make them different. And for a nonprofit, it's the relationships. And I think you would have picked that up from everything that we spoke about throughout today. And actually, after we worked out, what we were going to say today, I saw an article that was really all about that. And I shared it on our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for NPOs who run businesses. And that's really what it's all about. It's more relationships to manage and holding the tension between the demands of the various groups. And that they're not always the same demands. They're often in conflict with each other. And it takes a very special person as an organizational team to really hold that tension, and that's very key for a nonprofit. Whereas for a business, the greatest challenge is the constant need to find new customers and to broaden access to the target market. It is always about where we're going to find customers, how do we get them to buy, how do we sell. We spend huge amounts of money on sales training and marketing training and all these kind of things, because it's always about finding new customers. If you've found a business that has a repeat customer base, that people just come to you and you sell over and over again, that's absolutely hen's teeth. That's the ideal. But for a business, finding new customers is the constant focus, and that is really different to an NPO who already typically has a preset group of beneficiaries that they are working with, and the individuals might change, but the you know, it's part of who you are, the organization, the beneficiaries are part of the strategy, where you're not finding new individuals who are prepared to buy what you are selling on a consistent basis.
Good. So let's just go back to the beginning and share probably a little bit about who we are, because then it'll make sense why we're even having this conversation. So Michelle's going to chat to us about our product blueprint and just give you some insight into what happens inside our heads on a daily basis.
Yes, Bruce sent me a very interesting little meme the other day that's what it looks like inside his head. So it can be quite scary inside our heads. So we tried to put it into a diagram, into a physical representation of what it is we do so that you can understand who we are. So I'm going to very quickly go through this because I know we started a bit late and we're running a bit short on time. But the two swords represent Bruce and I, and as we've established, we come from very different backgrounds and with a different perspective on things, so we've different color swords. We haven't yet argued who's gold and who's silver. And then if you start from the center and you look at our byline, putting the profit into non-profits, and you'll see that all the circles are circular, except for the next one, which is the dark black one, which is a hexagon, because the hexagon then represents the business aspect that fits within the nonprofits. So we look at the problem, the people, the product, the profit, and the plan. You can see how we like our alliteration. And those are the aspects of running a business that we engage with our clients on in terms of how it fits within your nonprofit. And it can either be a separate legal entity, or it can be a really small, just charging for what you currently do. We're not defining what that business looks like or the business activity looks like. But we engage with our clients on those P's and how they fit into the broader circles. So the next circle out is your nonprofit. So there you can see we've got similar wording, projects instead of products, you know, structure, financial management, resources, planning, and impact. Those are the things that you worry about as a nonprofit. And that's the operational model areas that you would engage with. And so our process is threefold. With whatever we're doing with a client, we'll do a review. We'll sit with you and review what it is you're currently doing, what needs to be improved or changed. We then sit and work with you and co-create a strategy to meet those needs and to improve whatever it is that you are wanting to achieve, or start a strategy just to start from scratch. And then we accompany the implementation process. So whatever requirements you have of us, we have templates and models and pre-existing information that we can bring to the table, or it's just a case of checking stuff, or whatever it is that you're wanting us to help you with in terms of implementation. We have a number of partners that we work with in our strategic network that enable us to really speak to any area that you might have. And then the very outside layer are the three areas that we focus on in terms of services. So we start with business development. If you absolutely have never thought about starting any kind of chargeable service, we do from scratch with you. Business improvement, where if you already have something in place, we can review it with you and see what can be improved. And then operating model. So this is an assessment and recommendation report where we provide you with an assessment of either your operating model as a whole or an element of it, and then give you a report of recommendations for doing that. Looking at it from a strategic point of view to see if the way you're working is the way you should be working, and whether it is the most effective for what it is you're trying to achieve. So that was very fast, and I hope that I have covered, given you a sense of our passion and the way that we engage with clients. I wonder if there are any questions on that.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, what I want to do is we've got something for you. So we're not going to sell you anything here. This is not what we're about. We want to offer you something. So we have we've been launching. So we've got the NPO Facebook page. It's going to be rebranded and we relaunch it on the 1st of June. So you here are the first on the planet to get to hear about this stuff. So this is our soft launch to you. We're going to call it the NPO Cloud, and there's a whole lot of reasons behind that, but it's a cloud of business strategies for NPOs. And out of that cloud, there are a number of things there. So we're going to have a monthly webinar very similar to this, online discussion forums and support. We're going to develop a nice sense of community because NPOs love community, and we just want to expand on the existing community with us. We've also got to have a Facebook group, and I've put in the chat box the link to the group just in case you're not a member of it, and you can go click on that group and go join, and Michelle will then approve your membership. It is a closed group, so it's not just open to anyone. We do kind of eyeball you to make sure that you're worthy of our cloud. And what we're going to be doing from June is we're going to have a weekly mastermind. So we want to put together every week, and it may sound quite a lot, but you don't have to attend every week because the topics are going to change. And each week we will then take a single topic and we will brainstorm that and mastermind it. And the idea of a mastermind is not a webinar. The idea of a mastermind is co-create and collaborate. And the idea is to share other ideas. This is what you're doing, this is what we're doing, and we believe that as we get through this whole age of COVID, is as we're going to be getting there's going to be required more and more collaboration and unity and networking for us all to get through it together. And this is one of the vehicles that we want to propose, is that here's your vehicle of togetherness and community, and we're just going to reinforce that with a weekly mastermind that we will coordinate and collaborate on. So it won't always be Michelle or myself speaking. We'll bring in other speakers and we'll just have a whole bunch of fun online, and becoming more and more used to this Zoom monster that is now ruling our lives, and so getting there to be able to do that. So we just want to put that out to you and get that. If you want to get that link out of the chat box, you can go join the Facebook page and we will see you there.